I believe there are four components to Kim's national security strategy. The first component is economic revival. Kim Jong-il must know, I believe. Now, this is just my guess. I don't have any inside information. I didn't talk to him. I didn't read any documents that outline this. Just my view, my interpretation. But I think he must know that for North Korea to survive over the medium and long term, he has to restore the economy. The industrial economy shrunk dramatically in the 1990s. Some people say by more than half. North Korea is located in one of the most dynamic regions of the world in terms of economics. And it's the odd man out. It's the only place that isn't participating in the dynamic growth. It's basically treading water. Recent South Korean estimates put growth maybe at around 2% annually. But, no one knows about the methodology. So let's say it's 1% or 2%. So I think that's the first leg of the stool. I think it's growing in importance. A second leg or pillar of Kim Jong-il's, and I'll tell you in a minute how these are connected, a national security strategy, I believe, is an all-around or 360-degree diplomacy. Now, imagine Korea's situation. It's a small country in the middle of a neighborhood with lots of larger countries, the old image of a shrimp cut between fighting whales. And historically, at least, Northeast Asia has been a pretty rough neighborhood. A lot of North Korean foreign policy, I think, can be understood in this context. It needs to be diplomatically agile, to be able to move around, to tilt one way and then the other, and cannot allow itself to fall under the sway of any one of its bigger neighbors, whether that bigger neighbor be China or cooperation is fine. But, there is a game of legitimacy with South Korea. A third item is popular support for the regime, the home front. Now, this is perhaps the hardest element of North Korea's national security strategy to get a fix on, and I'm not sure. But I believe that the North Korean elites, that is, see this as important. I was reading the other day something that a former State Department translator wrote about the meeting between Assistant Secretary Kelly and North Korean First Vice Foreign Minister Kang Suk-ju in late 2002. And the article said that when Kang was pressed about North Korea's uranium enrichment program, he replied that North Korea was bound to produce more powerful weapons than that. And later, people speculated that what he was saying was that the more powerful weapon was the single-minded unity of the North Korean people around the great leader, Kim Jong-il, the great general, Kim Jong-il. So I think popular support for the regime matters to North Korean elites. And they used to be able to enlist nationalism much more strongly, much more than they can now, because they could portray themselves as, they fought the good fight against Japanese imperialism and then against American imperialism, and so they could wrap themselves in that aura. But I think performance is becoming much more important in North Korea now. And so maybe I'll just backtrack a little bit. I think all these elements in Kim's national security policy are interrelated. How can you build popular support if performance matters, if you have to begin to deliver more goods to people, if you're embarking on a people-first policy, which they're advertising these days, if you don't have economic revival? And how can you have economic revival if you don't have a more placid, a more stable external environment and external assistance? So all these elements, I think, are interlinked. Finally, there's a strong military. It's pretty clear North Korea wants that. But I think it's a big leap to go from that, for us analytically, to go from that saying he wants a strong military to say that he thinks he can achieve that with a few nuclear weapons. I don't believe he can. I'm not a military analyst, but that's my opinion. The military doesn't exist in isolation. Again, this linkage between the various legs of this national security strategy. How can you possibly have a strong military if you don't have much of an economy? And having a more vigorous diplomacy, a more stable external environment, not constant struggle, would also probably reduce your need for to rely on military force or to hedge by having that. So I don't think nuclear weapons are the be-all and end-all, and maybe this is the takeaway line, of Kim Jong-il's national security strategy. I think it's much broader than that. And so what's the bottom line? What does this all mean? Well, my own view is that I think it means that we probably have a greater chance of making progress than many people think. It isn't just, in my opinion, a matter of putting pressure on North Korea. That's part of it, of course. But Kim Jong-il has his own agenda. And I think there's some congruence between his agenda and our agenda. There's a lot more to that agenda than a few nuclear weapons. And I think he probably realizes that nuclear weapons are, and in the future will become, even more of an obstacle to some of the things that he wants to achieve. And so I think there's hope that, that this process of denuclearization and six-party talks can work for that reason.